Welcome to the Living a Meaningful and Fulfilled Life You Love channel. I usually post a collection of great inspiration stuff I've found once a month. So simply click the subscribe button below to be notified through YouTube when I post a new collection. Enjoy.
I have yet to give a speech or have a meeting where somebody doesn't ask me the millennial question.
What's the millennial question?
Apparently millennials as a generation, which is a group of people who were born approximately 1984 and after, are tough to manage. And they're accused of being entitled and narcissistic, and self-interested, unfocused, lazy. But entitled is the big one. And because they confound leadership so much, what's happening is leaders are asking the millennials, what do you want? And millennials are saying, we want to work in a place with purpose, love that. We want to make an impact, whatever that means. We want free food and beanbags. And so somebody articulates some sort of purpose, there's lots of free food and there's beanbags, and yet for some reason, they're still not happy. And that's because they're missing, there's a missing piece. What I've learned is that I can break it down into four pieces, right? There are four things, four characteristics. One is parenting, the other one is technology, the third is impatience, and the fourth is environment. The generation that we call the millennials, too many of them grew up subject to, not my words, failed parenting strategies. Where, for example, they were told that they were special all the time. They were told that they could have anything they want in life, just because they want it. Some of them got into honors classes, not because they deserved it, but because their parents complained. And some of them got A's, not because they earned them, but because the teachers didn't want to deal with the parents. Some kids got participation medals. You got a medal for coming in last, right? Which the science we know is pretty clear, which is it devalues the medal and the reward for those who actually work hard. And it actually makes the person who comes in last feel embarrassed because they know they didn't deserve it. So it actually makes them feel worse, right? So you take this group of people and they graduate school and they get a job and they're thrust into the real world, and in an instant they find out they're not special, their moms can't get them a promotion, that you get nothing for coming in last, and by the way, you can't just have it because you want it. And in an instant, their entire self-image is shattered. And so you have an entire generation that's growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations. The other problem, to compound it, is we're growing up in a Facebook, Instagram world. In other words, we're good at putting filters on things. We're good at showing people that life is amazing even though I'm depressed. And so everybody sounds tough, and everybody sounds like they got it all figured out. And the reality is there's very little toughness, and most people don't have it figured out. And so when the more senior people say, well, what should we do? They sound like, this is what you gotta do. And they have no clue, right? So you have an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations, right? Through no fault of their own, right? They were dealt a bad hand. Now let's add in technology. We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good, right? So we've all had it where you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a bit lonely, and so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, hi, 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 because it feels good when you get a response. It's why we count the likes, it's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower, did I do something wrong? Do they not like me anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get it, you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it, it's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive, right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe, right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them if something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook. These things balanced. Alcohol is not bad, too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun, too much gambling is dangerous. There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance. If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, that's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important to me right now, right? That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted, right? If you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction. And like all addiction, in time, it'll destroy relationships, it'll cost time, and it'll cost money, and it'll make your life worse. So you have a generation growing up with lower self-esteem that doesn't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. Now you add in the sense of impatience. They've grown up in a world of instant gratification. You want to buy something, you go on Amazon, it arrives the next day. You want to watch a movie? Log on and watch a movie. You don't check movie times. You want to watch a TV show? Binge. You don't even have to wait week to week to week, right? I know people who skip seasons just so they can binge at the end of the season, right? Instant gratification. You want to go on a date? You don't even have to learn how to be like, hey. You don't even have to learn and practice that skill. You don't have to be the uncomfortable one who says yes when you mean no and says no when you mean no, but yes when you don't have to swipe right. Bang, I'm a stud. Right? You don't have to learn the social coping mechanisms. Everything you want, you can have instantaneously. Everything you want, instant gratification. Except job satisfaction and strength of relationships, there ain't no app for that. They are slow, meandering, uncomfortable, messy processes. And so I keep meeting these wonderful, fantastic, idealistic, hardworking, smart kids. They've just graduated school. They're in their entry-level job. I sit down with them and I go, how's it going? They go, I think I'm gonna quit. I'm like, why? They're like, I'm not making an impact. I'm like, you've been here 8 months. You know? It's as if they're standing at the foot of a mountain and they have this abstract concept called impact that they want to have in the world, which is the summit. What they don't see is the mountain. I don't care if you go up the mountain quickly or slowly, but there's still a mountain. And so what this young generation needs to learn is patience. That some things that really, really matter, like love, or job fulfillment, joy, love of life, self-confidence, a skill set, any of these things, all of these things take time. Sometimes you can expedite pieces of it, but the overall journey is arduous and long and difficult. And if you don't ask for help and learn that skill set, you will fall off the mountain, or you will, the worst case scenario, and we're already seeing it, the worst case scenario is we're seeing an increase in suicide rates, We're seeing an increase in this generation. We're seeing an increase in accidental deaths due to drug overdoses. We're seeing more and more kids drop out of school or take leaves of absence due to depression. Unheard of. This is really bad. The best case scenario, those are all bad cases, right? The best case scenario is you'll have an entire population growing up and going through life and just never really finding joy. They'll never really find deep fulfillment in work or in life. They'll just waft through life and it'll be just, it's fine. How's your job? It's fine, the same as yesterday. How's your relationship? It's fine. Like that's the best case scenario, which leads me to the fourth point, which is environment, which is we're taking this amazing group of young, fantastic kids who were just dealt a bad hand. It's no fault of their own. And we put them in corporate environments that care more about the numbers than they do about the kids. They care more about the short-term gains than the long-term life of this young human being. We care more about the year than the lifetime, right? And so we are putting them in corporate environments that aren't helping them build their confidence, that aren't helping them learn the skills of cooperation, that aren't helping them overcome the challenges of a digital world and finding more balance, that isn't helping them overcome the need to have instant gratification and teach them the joys and impact and the fulfillment you get from working hard on something for a long time that cannot be done in a month or even in a year. And so we're thrusting to them in corporate environments, and the worst part about it is they think it's them. They blame themselves. They think it's them who can't deal. And so it makes it all worse. It's not. I'm here to tell them it's not them. It's the corporations, it's the corporate environments, it's the total lack of good leadership in our world today that is making them feel the way they do. They were dealt a bad hand, and I hate to say it, but it's the company's responsibility. Sucks to be you, like we have no choice, right? This is what we got, and I wish that society and their parents did a better job. They didn't. So we're getting them in our companies, and we now have to pick up the slack. We have to work extra hard to figure out the ways that we build their confidence. We have to work extra hard to find ways to teach them the social skills that they're missing out on. There should be no cell phones in conference rooms. None. Zero. And I don't mean the kind of like sitting outside waiting to text. I mean like when you're sitting and waiting for a meeting to start, this is what we all do. We all sit here and wait for the meeting to start. Meeting starting? Okay. And we start the meeting. No, that's not how relationships are formed. Remember we talked about it's the little things? Relationships are formed this way. We're waiting for a meeting to start and we go, how's your dad? I heard he was in the hospital. Oh, he's really good. Thanks for asking. He's actually at home now. Oh, I'm really glad. It was really amazing. I know, it was really scary for him. That's how you form relationships. Hey, did you ever get that report done? Oh my God, no, I didn't. I'll help you out. Can I help you out with that? Really? That's how trust forms. Trust doesn't form at an event in a day. Even bad times don't form trust immediately. It's the slow, steady consistency. And we have to create mechanisms where we allow for those little innocuous interactions to happen. But when we allow cell phones in conference rooms, we just, okay, have the meeting. And then my favorite is like when there's a cell phone there and you go like this, you go. It rings and you go. I'm not gonna answer that. Mr. Magnanimous, you know? When you're out for dinner with your friends, like I do this with my friends. When we're going out for dinner and we're leaving together, we'll leave our cell phones at home. Who are we calling? Maybe one of us will bring the phone in case we need to call an Uber or take a picture of our meal.
That was what I was saying, come on.
I'm an idealist, but I'm not insane. You know?
Not a heathen.
I mean, it looked really good. We'll take one phone. And so it's like an alcoholic. The reason you take the alcohol out of the house is because we cannot trust our willpower. We're just not strong enough. But when you remove the temptation, it actually makes it a lot easier. And so when you just say, don't check your phone, people literally will go like this. And somebody will go to the bathroom, and what's the first thing we do? Because I wouldn't want to look around the restaurant for a minute and a half. But if you don't have the phone, you just kind of enjoy the world. And that's where ideas happen. The constant engagement is not where you have innovation and ideas. Ideas happen when our minds wander and we go, and you see something, I bet I could do that. That's called innovation, right? But we're taking away all those little moments, right? You should not, and none of us should charge our phones by our beds. We should be charging our phones in the living rooms. right? Remove the temptation. You wake up in the middle of the night because you can't sleep, you won't check your phone, which makes it worse. But if it's in the living room, it's relaxed, it's fine. But it's my alarm clock. Buy an alarm clock. They cost $8, right? I'll buy you an alarm clock. But the point is we now in industry, whether we like it or not, we don't get a choice. We now have a responsibility to make up the shortfall and to help this amazing, idealistic, fantastic generation build their confidence, learn patience, learn the social skills, find a better balance between life and technology. Because, quite frankly, it's the right thing to do.
In one of my earlier videos, I've talked about Amor Fati. Amor Fati means love of fate and is a concept in Stoic philosophy, but also in the works of Nietzsche. The idea is to love and embrace whatever the outcome is, no matter how hard we work towards a certain goal. This way, we detach ourselves from possible results, which enhances the ability to focus on the task at hand and take away the anxiety that we may have concerning the future. The next question is, of course, how can we do this? In this video, I explore 4 ways to practice Amor Fati. First of all, thank you Judith and thank you Neil for your generous PayPal donation. I appreciate it very much. I'm also very happy with a lot of new Patreon supporters. Thank you Martin, Joshua, Hari, Nicole, John, Gaby, Christopher, Mark, Paul K, Paul D, Andrea and Wemper. Like I said, it's a lot and your help is very much appreciated. Now let's dive in. Love of fate. The concept is simple. Implementing it is more difficult because most minds drift off to the future very easily and begin to fantasize about things that might happen. When we are restless because of the future, we either desire or averse a certain outcome. When we desire a certain outcome, the idea of not getting it makes us anxious. When we averse a certain outcome, the idea of incurring it makes us anxious. Thus, it's the attachment to outcomes that creates the turmoil in our minds. To solve this, Epictetus argues that we should remove desire and aversion in regards to things that are not in our control. I quote, "If you desire any of the things which are not in your own control, you must necessarily be disappointed. And of those which are, and which it would be laudable to desire, nothing is yet in your possession. Only use the appropriate actions of pursuit and avoidance, and even these lightly and with gentleness and reservation." End quote. Now, this is easier said than done. The Stoics believe that humans are naturally inclined to look for things that enhance their lives and avoid things that don't. For example, we naturally look for wealth, healthy food, friendship, companionship, etc. The Stoics call these things indifference, that consist of preferred and dispreferred indifference. So it's understandable that the prospect of losing or not obtaining certain preferred indifference creates anxiety. The Stoics say, however, that these external factors are not necessary to be happy, which is great news because they are not in our control. So they would be very unreliable sources of happiness. Nevertheless, many people worry endlessly about the future. In order to reduce this maelstrom of anxious thoughts, trying to control the outcome is pointless, because we can't. What we can control, however, is the position we take towards the outcome, which the following 4 ways will be about. 1. Purposefully expose yourself to the thing you averse. Oftentimes, the things we averse are not as bad as we imagine them. Many people dread the idea of poverty, for example, which isn't so strange because in current society, we are constantly told that being poor is a terrible thing. Someone fearing poverty might ask oneself, how can I possibly live without a 4-bedroom house, a car of a certain brand, 2 vacations a year, eating in a restaurant at least once a week, and so on? The key to reduce the fear of certain outcomes is to actually expose ourselves to them so we experience that a perceived negative outcome is not so bad. This way we become familiar with hardship and thus prepared for it. Stoic philosopher Seneca had a nice quote about this. It is precisely in times of immunity from care that the soul should soften itself beforehand for occasions of greater stress. And it is while fortune is kind that it should fortify itself against her violence. End quote. The Stoics figured out that we do not need all these external things to be happy. Happiness comes down to our own actions. So when you fear poverty, how about living like a poor person for a number of days, in order to discover that being poor isn't so bad as we think? Another common fear is the fear of being single and alone. When you're afraid of this, how about saying no to relationships for a while and try to rely on yourself for happiness? Once we find out that being single actually can be a great thing, we stop the fear of being alone once we are in a relationship. This also prevents us from staying in abusive relationships so we can take steps into the direction we want without fearing the consequences. 2. See change as an opportunity. When I look back at life, I have seen that many things I feared actually came true. I have lost jobs. I've been kicked out of school a few times. I've lost relationships, friends, and many opportunities. At the same time, I also got other things in return, as if life always tries to balance itself out. After I finished college, I was not able to find a job because of the financial crisis. The worst case scenario happened. I had to work several simple jobs that were not what I wanted to do. When I look back, the experiences I had during these years were absolutely life-changing. I was able to do things and develop myself in certain ways that I would never have done if my life turned out as I had previously hoped. And I'm happy things happened as they happened. Here's a quote by Epictetus. Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well. End quote. Yes, we fear losing our jobs, losing our marriage, losing our money. But new situations, no matter how dreadful, always have new opportunities hidden in them. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius states that we should look for, and I quote, constant awareness that everything is born from change. The knowledge that there's nothing nature loves more than to alter what exists and make new things like it. All that exists is the seed of what will emerge from it. End quote. 3. Realize that happiness is relative. In one of my earliest videos, I've discussed how happiness is adaptive. In 1978, there was a study by Brickman, Coates and Janov Bullman who wanted to find out if happiness is relative. In order to find that out, they studied a group of lottery winners, a group of paralyzed accident victims, and a control group. Of course, we would expect that the lottery winner is much happier than someone who ended up paralyzed by an accident. And we also would expect that lottery winners are much happier than the control group that didn't win the lottery but weren't paralyzed either. In the first weeks or so, this was indeed the case. But 1 year later, the controls and the lottery winners were equally happy, and only slightly happier than the paralyzed accident victims. So if happiness is relative, why should we fear the future? The time and energy we spend on fearing the future is most likely worse than the future itself. Last year, my uncle was diagnosed with cancer. At this moment, he has been given up by the doctors, which means that he might not see the new year. When I visited him recently, he told me that he feels fantastic. He enjoys life to the fullest and is grateful for every day that is given to him. So whatever tragedy happens, we know that the new circumstances never exclude a sense of happiness and well-being. Moreover, we might unexpectedly feel even better than before in the face of hardship. 4. Be present. Now, the ways I've listed so far all have one thing in common. They point out that whatever happens, we will cope with the new circumstances. That we need the external things associated with our current life situation to be happy is an illusion. Happiness is relative, as well as unhappiness. The future is just another path. Not good, not bad, only if the mind makes it so. Change is the very essence of life. Resisting change is like resisting life. As soon as we resist change, we're already in the future, because instead of accepting the present moment, we try to preserve it for the days to come. Furthermore, we can't say that there's no future, nor is there a past. There's only now. When fate comes, it comes in the present. That's why embracing fate can only be done in the present moment. So when the future hasn't arrived yet, why worry about it? But when it comes, love it as it's here. Love it before it's gone. Because if you don't, you might regret that you didn't enjoy the moment when it was right before you. Amor Fati is the art of embracing whatever happens and not needing a single day beyond the present. As Seneca wrote about Epicurus, who was tortured by painful diseases and said, "Today and another day have been the happiest of all." Thank you for watching.
Non-dualism, often denoted with the Sanskrit terms Advaita or Advaya, is a metaphysical concept that literally means not two. It is both an ontological claim about the nature of reality and a description of the mystical experience. In all of the world's philosophical traditions, speculations about the nature of reality are pervasive. One of the recurring questions is, how many things are there really? The concepts of monism, dualism, and non-dualism are ways in which philosophers have attempted to respond to this question. Monism either declares that everything is one and that difference is, in some sense, not real, or it declares that difference is real, but it is ultimately made of just one thing or substance. Much New Age discourse, rooted in the idea that everything is one, is an example of monism. Perhaps somewhat ironically, many modern scientists also hold a monistic view of the universe, claiming that matter is the only real substance, and everything that seems different from matter, like human consciousness, is ultimately reducible to material interactions in the brain. Conversely, dualism posits that there are in fact two things that are substantially different and ultimately real. In the Western philosophical tradition, the most famous dualist was René Descartes, who argued that two things, res cogitans and res extensa, or thought and extension, are ultimately incommensurable ontological principles. Non-dualism can be seen as striking an interesting balance between the two perspectives of monism and dualism, because it isn't saying that there is one thing or two things, it is saying that there are not two things, or that reality is other than two. In the tantric traditions comprising what is commonly referred to as Kashmir Shaivism, non-dualism is captured in images of Shiva and Shakti, who are often copulating as a way of expressing their ontological entanglement. In these traditions, Shiva and Shakti are consciousness and energy, two things that interact to create every expression of life as we know it, but which are, in the final instance, non-separate from one another. You cannot have Shiva without Shakti. In some contemplative traditions, the goal of meditative practice is to ultimately steep oneself in a space beyond or below language, a space we might refer to as non-dual. Because while immersed in this silent space, the subject, the object, and the means of knowledge collapse into an experience of pulsating aliveness not conditioned by the affairs of the world. When we come out of meditation, we take a little bit of that nourishing wisdom with us, hopefully integrating it into our waking life, our commitments, and our relationships.
This was it for today. Really hope you liked it. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up, maybe even leave a comment below, and subscribe to be notified through YouTube when there will be new videos about living a meaningful and fulfilling life you love. In any case, thank you very much again for watching, and looking forward to hopefully see you in the next video.